Let us go to the first puzzle. Here are threats in puzzle position. Queen takes knight check. Here are the checks. Queen takes knight check. The puzzle is solved using a4, queen to a6, rook to d4, rook to f1, check, king to a2. Let's continue. Let us look at threats in puzzle position. Bishop takes pawn. Bishop takes knight. Knight takes rook. Rook takes pawn. There are no checks in this position. The answer is knight takes rook. Queen to b4, check. King to f1. Next, here are threats in puzzle position. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen takes rook. Queen takes pawn. Here are checks in puzzle position. Queen to f7, check. Queen to e8, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Rook to c2. Rook to d2. Rook to c8, check. Bishop to f8. Bishop to h6. Rook takes knight. Rook takes bishop, check. Queen takes rook. Bishop takes queen. Rook to e6. Queen takes pawn. Rook to f6. Queen takes pawn, check. One more. The threats are. There are no threats in this position. The checks are. Bishop to f6, check. Bishop to c7, check. The best move in puzzle position is bishop to c7, check. King to e6. King takes knight. King to d7. Bishop to e5. Let's continue. Let us look at threats in puzzle position. Queen takes knight, check. Bishop takes pawn, check. The checks are queen to h4, check. Queen takes knight, check. Bishop takes pawn, check. Answer to this puzzle is queen to h4, check. King to d2. Queen takes bishop. Another one. Threats in puzzle position are rook takes bishop, check. Queen takes rook. The checks are rook takes bishop, check. Solution to the puzzle is rook takes bishop, check. King takes rook. Rook to h8, check. King to e7. Queen to g5, check. King to d7. Queen takes knight, check. Let us go to the next puzzle. Let us look at threats in puzzle position. Rook takes bishop. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes rook. Queen takes bishop. Rook takes rook, check. The checks are queen takes pawn, check. Rook takes rook, check. Solution to the puzzle is rook to a8. Rook to b1. Rook takes rook, check. Queen takes rook. Rook to a1. Queen takes rook. Bishop takes queen. Another puzzle. Here are the threats. Rook takes knight. Bishop takes bishop. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes knight. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Checks in this position are queen takes pawn, check. Queen to c3, check. Queen takes pawn, check. The best move in puzzle position is rook takes knight. Pawn takes rook. Queen takes pawn, check. Next puzzle. Here are threats in puzzle position. Queen takes queen, check. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes pawn, check. Knight takes bishop. Rook takes bishop. The checks are queen to c7, check. Queen to b8, check. Queen to d7, check. Queen to d8, check. Queen to f8, check. Queen takes queen, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Solution to the puzzle is queen takes queen, check. Bishop takes queen. Rook to f8, check. King to d7. Rook takes rook. Let us go to the next puzzle. Here are the threats. Pawn takes rook. There are no checks in this position. Solution to the puzzle is pawn takes rook. Queen takes pawn, check. King to d1. Next, let us look at threats in puzzle position. Rook takes pawn. Let us look at checks in puzzle position. Rook to e8, check. Rook to a7, check. Rook to e8, check. Answer to this puzzle is rook to a7, check. King to d6. Rook to d8, check. King to c6. Rook takes rook. c4, check. King to e3. d4, check. Rook takes pawn. Bishop takes rook, check. King takes bishop. Next, the threats are queen takes pawn. Queen takes bishop. Queen takes knight. Checks in puzzle position are. Queen to d5, check. The puzzle is solved using queen to d5, check. e6. Queen takes knight. Let us go to the next puzzle. Here are threats in puzzle position. Bishop takes knight. Queen takes knight. Queen takes rook. There are no checks in this position. Solution to the puzzle is queen takes knight. Queen takes rook, check. Rook takes queen. Rook takes queen. Bishop takes rook. Next, here are the threats. There are no threats in this position. Here are the checks. Bishop to e3, check. Answer to this puzzle is bishop to e3, check. King to h1, d3. One more. Threats in puzzle position are pawn takes pawn. Queen takes pawn, check. Bishop takes pawn. Checks in this position are h7, check. Queen to c8, check. Queen takes pawn, check. The answer is h7, check. King takes pawn. Rook to h1, check. King to g8. Queen to c8, check. Rook to f8. Rook to h8, check. King takes rook. Queen takes rook, check. King to h7. Queen takes rook. Queen to f1, check. King to d2. Next puzzle position vulnerabilities are queen takes bishop. Knight takes pawn. There are no checks in this position. Answer to this puzzle is d5. Pawn takes pawn. Bishop to c5. Let's see the next puzzle. The threats are pawn takes pawn. Queen takes queen. There are no checks in this position. Solution to the puzzle is queen takes queen. Pawn takes queen. e5. Pawn takes pawn. Bishop takes rook. Next, let us look at threats in puzzle position. Knight takes pawn. Knight takes pawn, check. Bishop takes pawn. Queen takes bishop. Queen takes knight. Knight takes pawn. Let us look at checks in puzzle position. Knight to e7, check. Knight takes pawn, check. Answer to this puzzle is bishop takes pawn. Knight takes rook. Knight takes pawn, check. King to h7. Queen to f5, check. King takes bishop. Queen takes bishop, check. King to h7. Rook takes knight. Queen to b6, check. King to f1. One more. Here are the threats. Rook takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Pawn takes pawn. Here are checks in puzzle position. Rook takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn, check. c4, check. The answer is c4, check. King to d2. Queen takes bishop. One more. The threats are king takes pawn. There are no checks in this position. Solution to the puzzle is h4. Knight to e3. g3. b6. King takes pawn. Let us go to the next puzzle. Here are the threats. Rook takes pawn. Queen takes knight. The checks are queen to a2, check. Queen to a1, check. Solution to the puzzle is queen to a2, check. King to c1. Rook takes pawn, check. King to d2. Rook to c2, check. King to e1. Rook takes queen, check. Next, threats in puzzle position are rook takes knight. Queen takes knight. Queen takes knight, check. Bishop takes pawn. Bishop takes pawn, check. Here are the checks. Queen takes knight, check. Bishop takes pawn, check. Solution to the puzzle is queen takes knight, check. King to b1. Queen takes pawn, check. Let us go to the next puzzle. Let us look at threats in puzzle position. Rook takes pawn. Queen takes queen. Queen takes pawn. Let us look at checks in puzzle position. Rook to g7, check. Queen to d5, check. Queen to a2, check. The answer is queen to d5, check. King to h8. Queen to b7. Another puzzle. Threats in this position are bishop takes knight, check. Checks in this position are bishop takes knight, check. Solution to the puzzle is bishop takes knight, check. Bishop takes bishop. Queen takes bishop, check. One more. Let us look at threats in puzzle position. Rook takes pawn, check. Rook takes pawn. Checks in this position are Rook takes pawn, check. Queen to e5, check. Queen to c7, check. Answer to this puzzle is Queen to c7, check. King to f8. Queen to d8, check. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.